Hello and welcome to another sword review. My name is Kyle, aka AlienTude, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Condor Grosse Messer. Before I begin, a bit about me. I'm a sword collecting enthusiast with essentially no training in using swords. I'm not particularly well versed in history, and when it comes to swords, about the only thing you could consider me an expert at is admiring them. The Condor Grosse Messer has an MSRP of approximately $240 US. I personally bought it from Therian Arms for $220. Let's talk a bit about Condor Tool and Knife. They're an El Salvador-based company that has a pretty good reputation for quality knives. They don't make many swords, focusing much more on knives, machetes, and the like. They've partnered with Zombie Go Boom to produce the Executioner machete/sword that I reviewed on this channel. They have a lot of experience making smaller blades, but a sword as large as the Grosse Messer is a considerably different prospect. So what is a Messer? Well, the word Messer is, as I understand it, German for knife. You'll typically find them offered in one of three names: Messer, Grosse Messer, meaning big knife, and Kriegsmesser, or war knife. Typically in the sword reproduction market, Grosse Messers are marketed as single-hand swords and Kriegsmessers as two-handed. In that aspect, this sword could be named the Condor Kriegsmesser. I believe Grosse and Kriegsmessers rose in popularity in Germany during the Renaissance. I've seen several theories about why, ranging from swords being illegal while knives were not, to rivaling guilds, to just plain fashion trends. Since I'm not a historian, I'll leave the debate up to them. A Messer's handle construction is that of a knife, with two slabs attached to the tang, usually via several pins, as opposed to a sword's design in which the tang is completely encapsulated in the grip material. While technically this is a knife, I'll probably refer to it as a sword at least a few times. One of the defining characteristics of Messers is the nagel. This is the part of the crossguard that juts out perpendicular to the rest of the guard. It's there to provide additional hand protection to the wielder. This is quite typical of blade evolution during the Renaissance, as hilt and guard design increased in complexity quite a bit. As per usual, I'm going to go over the different parts of the blade, starting with the pommel. Most Messers I've seen have a fairly similar shape to this one, with a bit of a hook to help keep the hand from sliding off. But this one being made of walnut wood is pretty unusual. Most I've seen are steel. It's designed to be reminiscent of a bird's head, probably a condor as befits the maker. It's well formed and the fit is perfect. There's no tactile seam where it meets the grip. I find it to be quite the handsome look and comfortable to boot. The grip is made of two slabs of hickory that are pinned to the tang. There's probably some epoxy holding it there as well. It's formed into a rounded rectangular shape that is quite comfortable to hold, although I do find the wood to be a little smooth for my taste. I'm used to leather-wrapped grips, which helps give a more textured surface to hold onto. And this wood is almost slick. That being said, I didn't experience the sword slipping out of my hands at all. It just felt a little different and a little weird. The fit of the grip to the tang is quite good. While the tang sticks out from the grip by a small amount in a few places, I haven't felt it bite into my hands at all. The pins are perfectly flush with the wood as well. The crossguard and nagel are made of some kind of iron-based metal, as it does react to a magnet. Probably steel of some type, but the finish on it is pretty weird. It almost makes the guard look plastic, which is pretty unappealing to me. I think it was done to match the shape and collar of the scabbard. More on that in a bit. The guard has a slight S shape to the quillins. It's generally pretty blocky though. It doesn't really have much, if any, nuance to the shape. The corners are chamfered, and it doesn't bite into my hand at all. The nagel is straight until it curves back towards the hand the last inch or so, swelling into a shape that I think resembles a bird's talons. I like the shape of it, but the finish is just not attractive to me. Let's take a look at the scabbard. Swords in this price range often don't come with a scabbard, or they'll just come with a leather sheath. This one has the benefit of having a wood core. That's about the only good thing I have to say about it though. Looking into the throat, I can make out what looks like a piece or two of felt or some other cloth glued to the inside. Maybe it's to act like a shim? The bit of wood I can see gives me the impression that it's quite low quality. The leather is very loose on here. It's clear it wasn't glued to the core, simply wrapped and stitched. The feel of it makes me think it's artificial leather as well. The shape and collar are both ferrous, but they have the same finish as the crossguard, which makes them look, and feel for that matter, like plastic. The collar at the throat has Condor's logo in it, which does give it some decorative appeal. The fit of the messer to the scabbard is not particularly good. There's a lot of rattle, and not quite enough retention for my taste. When held upside down, it feels like the blade is going to slip out immediately, and it takes only the slightest movement for it to come out. So yeah, the scabbard's just not good. That being said, it's still a fully functional scabbard that helps protect the blade, and for the price this messer sells for, it might as well be considered a bonus. Now it's time to talk about the business end, the blade. Here's the measurements I took of the messer. Looking at the thickness of the spine, it stays at a uniform 4.8 millimeters thick, about 3/5 of the way up the blade, before tapering down to 3 1/3 millimeters near the sharp angle that begins the tip. The tip itself is a slender 1.3 millimeters. The blade geometry leads to a great deal of authority in the cut, but it also makes this messer feel like a heavy chopper rather than a nimble cutter. This is the first messer I've used, so I can't say how common that is for them. The finish on the blade is a satin that I quite like. I generally find I like satin finishes more than mirror, but that's purely a matter of preference. The surface of the blade does show some rippling, but it's not egregious. The lines of the fuller are straight, although the terminations are a little uneven. They end at slightly different spots on the blade, maybe a millimeter or two difference, which is small enough that it shouldn't really affect the blade's performance. This messer is listed at Therian Arms as razor sharp, and Condor Tool and Knife represents it as a sharp blade as well. It was not sharp when I received it. It had excellent blade geometry, with the grinds even and smooth all the way to the thin edge, but the edge was just not sharp. I could draw it across my hand without a worry. This didn't particularly affect the cutting performance, more on that in a bit, but it was disappointing. Since I'm not good at sharpening blades, I took it to a local sharpener. It didn't take him long to put a nice keen edge on the blade, which is a testament to how close it was to sharp. Like I said, the geometry was very nice and it was ready for an edge. Kind of wonder if it just missed the final sharpening stage at Condor somehow. Anyway, let's take a look at some cutting footage. Please keep in mind that I'm a novice when it comes to cutting. I have no training in it, and I'm learning as I go. So first up is cutting with the messer as it came, with an edge that wasn't sharp. It cut pool noodles better than I expected. It definitely did some tearing, especially mid-cut, but it still managed to get some good clean cuts. Water bottles were similar. My first cut was pretty much a fail, but after that, it did generally manage to cut the bottle in half, with some unevenness as it passed through the backside of the bottle. I also cut a milk jug, and here it performed the best. It cleaved through the entire jug without an issue, although I wasn't able to get multiple cuts out of it. Moving on to the sharpened test cutting. I first want to apologize for the focus problems here. This was a new camera, and I'm still learning how to use it. Its autofocus feature never seemed quite sure what to focus on. Anyway, I found the messer to cut much more cleanly on pool noodles, as I expected. Some of the cuts still exhibited some tearing, and they weren't completely clean, but that might be a result of my technique rather than the blade's fault. And with water bottles, the difference is pretty stark. The cuts were much cleaner here, and the bottles didn't fly away nearly as much. It felt a lot better to cut them with the sharpened blade. The milk jug cut ended up about the same, but from a user perspective, it just felt much better. Okay, time to talk bottom line. Was the Condor Grosse messer worth the price of $220 US? Even though mine wasn't actually sharp, I think it is worth it. The blade is well formed, the hilt is solid, and while some of the aesthetics are not my cup of tea, I'm looking at you, plastic looking finish, it's a very decent blade for the price. There's not many budget messers on the market today, so I'm really happy I was able to pick this one up. The long-rumored, seemingly never quite appearing new Balor Arms model showed a Kriegsmesser, but those were supposed to be released early this year, and there's still no word when or if they'll be available. If you're looking for a budget two-handed messer, I think the Condor Grosse messer is a good option. And that's going to wrap up this review. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to see more reviews, please consider subscribing to my channel. Until next time, Alien Toot out.